What is up, magical misfits? This is my next episode, if you will, of Withcy Tales. And as you can see from the title, it is called Out of the Mouth of Babes. Now I have 3 different stories I want to tell in this video. And the first one that happened is the one that's most dear to me, so I'm going to tell it last. Now this isn't some super mystical, really cool story, but there's still stories I think are important. The first one I'm going to tell is, well, the first 2 I'm going to tell actually are from when I was working in that little witchy shop. So while I was there was a woman who would bring her son in very often, and it was at least over a year. From the time he was 2 to 3 years old in there, they would come in all the time. And he was a very hyperactive little boy, and he became frustrated and angry easily. He was the type of child that you had to keep engaged or there would be trouble. They came in quite a bit, and we watched him grow and start talking. Even though developmentally on some levels he was a little behind other children, he did begin to progress slowly. And this didn't happen every time they came in the store, but several times. And it wasn't right in a row either. It was just whenever he felt like it. He would walk around, and we always had dishes of tumbles, tons and tons of different kinds of tumbles. And he would occasionally walk around and pick a stone and give it to someone, either his mother. Sometimes she brought a friend with her who would come without her as well, but and he'd pick for her, he'd pick for me, he'd pick for random customers. But occasionally he would pick a tumble and he would say, "You need this." Now, of course, he was 3 years old. He didn't say it that clearly, but "You need this." And every time he did this, we would look in the book and see what it was. And every single time it was something that was beneficial to that person at that time. It was something they needed. That stone carried properties that would help them and something that was going on in their life. It was pretty amazing, really. The second one is also in the store. I live near the beach, and the store I worked on was actually located on the beach. And so there are visitors coming in from out of town all the time during the season. This was during the season. These people were tourists, and it was a family of them. I know there was at least a couple aunts and a mom and a little boy. There was a crowd of them that came in. The little boy had to be 7 or 8 years old, and he just wandered around the store looking at everything. Now, in the store, it was a very eclectic mix of things. And my boss lady had these all manner of brass Buddhas in the store. And only one of them was Fat Happy Buddha. The rest were like legit Buddha, and he'd be standing like this, or, with his little headgear on and his robes and what have you. And 2 of them were very large. They probably were 2.5, 3 feet tall. And they would stand on either side of the doorway. And he walked up to one of them, and it was nearly as tall as him. And I remember he just said, "Oh, he's a master," and turned around and went back to what he was doing. And his aunts and his mom kind of giggled. They thought it was funny. They thought like he was referring to some martial arts style or something, that, he was, a Shaolin master or something. And of course, my boss lady chimes in and is like, no. He actually is a master. He's a master teacher. This is Buddha. And they didn't know what she was talking about. So, she explained a little bit, and we were kind of excited about it. But I remember the look on the mother's face. It was priceless. She was her and her sisters were so touched because, as they explained, this child was autistic. And he didn't communicate much. So it was always, they were always very delighted when he did say something and communicate and interact. And I don't know, the whole thing, like I said, the family was very touched. It was a very touching thing for them. So it was very touching for us, and we thought it was really cool. The third story, of course, is the one that's most dear to me because it's about one of my own children, my youngest. He was 3 years old and he was potty training, and he had to potty. So he was doing his thing, and I'm sitting there with him. And when he would have to poo, I would read to him while he was on the toilet. Trying to make this, I always tried to make potty training enjoyable for my children. So there I sat reading a Twiddlebug book to my son as he used the restroom. I don't know if any of you know what that is. If you grew up watching Sesame Street in the late 70s, early 80s, you might. But Bert and Ernie's apartment had a flower box in the windowsill, and in the flower box was flowers, obviously, but these little Twiddlebugs, and you would go into their world and blah, blah, blah. So I'm reading him this book, and I'm in the middle of reading, not paying him no mind, really. And suddenly he interrupts me, and he says, "Do you remember when I was the mommy and you were the baby?" And I stop and I look up at him, and honestly, I'm in shock. I said, "No." And he said, "Hmm." And I went back to reading for a minute, and then I'm like, wait a minute. What was it like when you were the mommy and I was the baby? And he just looked at me for a minute and shrugged. And as much as I tried to prod him and get him to talk about it, he wouldn't talk about it anymore. But it was so very touching for me. It was so it brought me this immense sense of peace. That not only was this beautiful soul in my life in this lifetime, and I was cherishing him and taking care of him, but he had done the same for me in a prior lifetime, that we were that connected. And I always sort of believed in this soul group idea, and even without a name, kindred. I'd always believed that there were people that I believed in reincarnation, so I believed that, we came many times, and that we would facilitate different roles in each other's lives, helping each other grow as a group. But to have a 3-year-old child confirm it for me was pretty amazing to me. So the point of this video basically is that when we come into this world, we don't know anything about the world. We are very naive in the ways of the world. And as we grow, we learn more about the world and become less naive about the world. The world writes on us and changes us. But when we come into this world, we have another wisdom. We have other knowing that eventually gets erased so that we can focus on the task at hand, on living in this world and surviving in this world. Adults, not as much today, but throughout history, adults have looked at children as if they have nothing to offer because they don't know anything about the world. And I think it's really important that as adults we pay attention to children and their beautiful pureness. There's so much wisdom in there. And so that's why I wanted to do this little video out of the mouth of babes. Thanks for listening, and until next time, much love and gratitude.